Senator Rand Paul is looking to grow the Republican Party, and he says it has to be done if Republicans want to win back the White House. But he also doesn't shy away from pointing the finger, even claiming one wing of the party bears some of the blame for the rise of ISIS. He joined me earlier to talk about his new book, Taking a Stand, and we started by talking about the family business. I voted for your dad in 2012. I voted more as a protest vote against the big government republicanism that dominated this party over the past 2 decades. But I never really thought that your dad had a chance of winning. The challenge I've said time and time again for you is proving to people that politically you're not your dad, in that if I decide to vote for you, I'm not just doing it because I'm angry at the Republican establishment. How do you get past that?
Well, it's a gradual overcoming in the sense that I'm very proud of my dad and I'm proud of all the things that he did. And I have to present the message the way I think it's best to present the message. And there are some differences in the message and also differences in the presentation. But I also think that I've found things that really, really need to be addressed, that it just happens to be the time to address them. The Patriot Act, me standing up against the Patriot Act is one of those. Also criminal justice. We have, I think, a sort of a undercurrent of unease in our cities that someone needs to address. And I think some of the anger is justifiable in the sense that people are angry about being rounded up and incarcerated for nonviolent things,
right,
or on drugs.
So does that help you move beyond 10, 11, 12%? I mean, it's such a crowded field. How do you stand out in that field?
The only way Republicans, I'm thinking beyond actually the primary, but the only way we become a dominant party and win nationally again is we have to be more diverse. We have to get more African-American vote, more Hispanic vote, but also more youth vote. So like if you ask young people under 40, let's say, do you think the government should collect all of your phone records with a single warrant that says Verizon on it? 83% of them say no. I'm the only one out there saying the Patriot Act went too far and that the bulk collection of our records went too far.
Some Republicans like Bill Kristol, who's on the show a good bit, would say, and he has said, that you stand with Keith Ellison.
You know, he's a bit confused on things, and when Bill wins in office, we'll listen more to what he has to say. I don't think he's very much into the mainstream of what is popular in America anymore. I think
are Republicans on foreign policy with the mainstream of Americans? Have we been for the past decade?
If you want to get to America, you got to get outside the Beltway, and a lot of people are trapped inside the Beltway, and they think that war is always the answer. But I'm asking some difficult questions of Republicans. Do you think the invasion of Iraq made it more stable or us more safe? We now have ISIS to contend with.
Right.
Do you think the invasion of Libya made us more safe or made the country more stable?
See, that's the disconnect, though, isn't it? Because I've probably given 400, 500 speeches to Republicans, Democrats, everybody. I haven't met anybody in 5 years that thinks it's made sense for us to spend $2 billion a week in Afghanistan while our own schools, our own highways, and our own railways are tearing apart. There seems to be, in this area more than any other area, defense, a massive disconnect between Washington and the rest of America.
But the interesting thing is people want to paint me as out of step with the Republican Party, but when you get outside the Beltway and you go to America,
exactly,
the rest of America, I think, is more in line with what I'm saying, because I think we do have to defend ourselves. I'm all for doing something to stop ISIS. I was all for doing something after 9/11 to go after bin Laden.
How do we stop ISIS?
You know, I think the ultimate answer is getting Arab coalitions and boots on the ground that will stop them. You need Turks fighting. The Turks need to have their army up on the border and they need to fight.
But they're not going to do that as long as Assad's in power, right?
Yeah, but I think what you need to do is, I would recognize the Kurds. I would give them weapons. I would take all the weapons that are rotting in Afghanistan and give them to the Kurds. But I would do simultaneously as I would get a peace treaty between the Kurds and the Turks. And I would say, look, the Kurds, you've got to give up any pretensions to any territory in Turkey. Turkey, let's go ahead and get along and let's together wipe out ISIS. Also, Assad does really need to leave. When Assad leaves, there needs to be a government that we could support. Right now, there are 1,500 groups, many of them bad people, including ISIS, that hawks in our party have been arming.
A guy that works very closely with John McCain and is going to be running against you, we think he's going to be a heat-seeking random missile through the entire campaign, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham would say ISIS exists because of people like Rand Paul, who said, let's not go into Syria. And what do you say to Lindsey?
I would say it's exactly the opposite. ISIS exists and grew stronger because of the hawks in our party who gave arms indiscriminately, and most of those arms were snatched up by ISIS. These hawks also wanted to bomb Assad, which would have made ISIS's job even easier. They created these people. ISIS is all over Libya because these same hawks in my party loved Hillary Clinton's war in Libya. They just wanted more of it. But Libya is a failed state and it's a disaster. Iraq really is a failed state, or a vassal state now of Iran. So everything that they've talked about in foreign policy, they've been wrong about for 20 years, and yet they have somehow the gall to keep saying and pointing fingers otherwise.
Let's talk about the defense budget. I'm a hawk. At least I'm a hawk by the standards of 1990. When you see a budget over $600 billion in the Pentagon, at least I sit there thinking, this is money that we're throwing away. We don't need a $600 billion budget. There has to be some way to cut the waste. Tom Coburn said that the Pentagon was the only institution in Washington, D.C. that you just couldn't audit because it's so Byzantine. Do you think America needs a $600 billion plus defense budget?
I'm a big fan of John Lehman. Remember, he was the youngest Secretary of the Navy under Reagan, and he was for more ships. He says we got to defend our country, but he would pay for them by reducing Pentagon bureaucracy, and that message hasn't been heard, that he would actually cut spending to pay for the spending that
would you cut the Pentagon budget from 600 down?
I think it's easier. It's not as easy to say the exact number. What I would say is that defense is the #1 priority, and I'll spend what it takes to defend the country. But do I think we need more than all the 14 next countries combined? I think that it needs to be examined, and we need to spend money on what we need it. You know, do we need Tomahawk missiles? Yes. Do we need cruise missiles?
Right.
Yes. There are a lot of things that we do need.
But do you think there's money that we can cut in the defense budget?
I think there's a huge bureaucracy, and I think, like you, it's insulting that